ಹಾಯ್ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ಸ್, ಸಾಧನೆಯ ದಾರಿ ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಚಾನಲ್ಗೆ ಸ್ವಾಗತ. ಸೊ ನಾನು ಈ ಚಾನಲ್ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ICSE 2024-25 ಏನು 10th ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ ಹಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿ ಸಿಲೆಬಸ್ ಇದೆ ಅದನ್ನು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೈನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ ವೈಸ್ ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ. ಸೊ ಐ ಹೋಪ್ ಈ ವಿಡಿಯೋ ICSE ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಬೆನಿಫಿಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀನಿ. ಸೊ ಟೇಕ್ ಬೆನಿಫಿಟ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ದಿಸ್ ವಿಡಿಯೋ and watch this video, subscribe, share, like, comment for this anta helta. So first we can getting into the first lesson of the history chapter here. So they mentioned it about the first war of independence 1857. Yes, so first lesson mentioned about the first war of Indian independence 1857. So in this lesson we are going to know about that. So what about how that the Britishers entered to our country, how they established their empire in our India, and what about the causes for the first war of independence. So what about the consequences or the result of that first war of independence in our country, and what about the drawbacks of Indian independence or first war of Indian independence 1857. So now we can discuss about one by one. Okay, so first we can discuss about the introduction about the first war of Indian independence 1857. So most commonly we people know about it in the year 1600. Britishers entered to our country as the traders, especially in the year of 1613. That Jahangir, one of the Mughal ruler, he permitted to the trade and to establish the British factories in our country. So after that, when that people know about the weakness of our Indian rulers and all, medicinity among the Indian people and all, they started to establish one of the huge empire. So in the time of that mid 18th century, British started to conquest our country, entire country here. So when that Indian people know about that policies and the actions of the Britishers, it will harm to the Indian people and Indian provinces. On that time, some of the Indian society has raised against the British policies and the actions, British rules and regulations in our country. So what about the society started to rise some of the revolt against the Indian people, Britishers anta andre, that is by the kings, Indian queens and Indian peasants, some of the landlords, some of the tribe people and the Indian soldiers. So they were started that revolt against the British policies first. But what about it antandra, that is not spread to the entire country. It is only started in some of the provinces and some of the region against the British people here to get rid from the British ruling anta. So this is only causes to start one of the revolt. We are calling it as the first war of Indian independence 1857. So most commonly we know about it. This is also calling it as the uprising of 1857, and also it has called by the British people anta andre Sipai Mutiny and all. So another one of the title, especially what we are discussing as the first war of independence 1857, like that. So this title was given by the V.D. Savarkar. So this is one of the major event in our history, held it in the time of the 19th century, say here. Now we are going to discuss about causes of the first war of independence. So we people know about that when that the Britishers conquered our entire country here, they started to impose some of the different rules and regulations, and they has taken some of the different actions that has become against to the Indian people here. So because of the policies introduced by the British people, our Indian people, for example, they suffered, our peasants, even our landlords, zamindars and all, our Indian soldiers, lot of people suffered from the policies introduced by the British people. So because of this all suffering, economical suffering, political issues and all, even they hurt some of the social and religious belief of the Indians. So because of these all reasons, our Indian people has started a revolt against the British people here. So it has become one of the causes to the first war of Indian independence. So one by one we can discuss about the different causes to the part of the starting or rise of the first war of Indian independence. So that causes has bifurcated into some of the different division here. So in this, first we can discuss about the political causes of the first war of Indian independence. So political causes means it is related for the administrative issues of the Indians and by the British people in our country. So they has introduced some of the policies to extend their empire, extend their ruling system in India. So that also bifurcated into some of the different points here. One by one we can discuss. So first one is about that policy of expansion. So policy of expansion means how that Britishers extended their territorial ruling or the territorial expansion in our country like that. So to expand their entire empire or to expand their ruling system in our country, to conquer that entire part of India, they has implemented some of the policies here, some of the rules to the Indian people. So first rule what they introduced means, first method what they followed to conquer that entire parts of the country means, first that is by outright wars like that. So what about that outright wars means, when they started to conquer that, they has engaged in the part of that lot of different wars against the Indian rulers here. So for example, first we can discuss about that battle of Buxar, battle of Plassey, and another one of the example we can take it here means some of the Anglo-Mysore wars, means it has fought between that Britishers and the Mysore rulers. And another one of the thing we can discuss about that Anglo-Maratha wars against that British people and the Marathas. So Peshwas also suffered lot from the British ruling and the British policies here, and they started to annex that Punjab region. So lot of different region, by announcing war against the Indian rulers, they started to conquer that some of the provinces, some of the kingdoms belongs to the Indian ruler here. So that thing, that method used by the Britishers, we are calling it as the outright wars, or this is one of the important method followed by the Britishers to conquer the different provinces and that. So second one is about that by subsidiary alliances. So subsidiary alliances, especially it has introduced by one of the British person, that we are calling it as the Lord Wellesley. So what he introduced to conquer that entire part of our country means, he introduced one of the important policy in our country. So what about that important policy means, subsidiary alliances. So subsidiary alliances means nothing. This was an agreement between that British East India Company and also Indian princely state. So what about the agreement of that subsidiary alliances means, our Indian rulers must accept some of the policies, some of the rules of the Britishers here. So this is one of the hidden intention of the Britishers means to extend their power in our country. So those who are not able to fight against the British policies and all, that princely states were agreed to the policy of the subsidiary alliances. So what about the agreement between that Britishers and Indian princely states here antandre, first one, that Indian princely states or Indian rulers must accept that the Britishers as one of the supreme power in our country like that. So next one is about that, another one of the thing, that Indian rulers must have one of the British resident in their headquarters. They must agree to employ that British people, Another one agreement under the subsidiary alliances means, Indian rulers must agree to maintain British troops at their own cost. So this is also another one of the policy introduced by the Britishers. So under this subsidiary alliances, some of the Indian provinces has comes under the part of the British ruling on that time. For example, Nizams of Hyderabad, rulers of Mysore, rulers of that Jodhpur, Jaipur. So these all provinces agreed on, signed to the agreement of the subsidiary alliances. So next policy was doctrine of lapse. Lord Dalhousie introduced this policy. So what about this policy, doctrine of lapse means, if an Indian ruler died without a male heir, his kingdom would lapse, that is, it would come under the company's territory in India. So that provinces must hand over to the British East India Company to rule over that. So what about the states, provinces applying to the part of the doctrine of lapse on that time means, Satara, Jaipur, Sambalpur, Udaipur, Nagpur. So these all are one of the provinces applied under the policy of the doctrine of lapse. So under that policy, they expand their territorial powers in our country. So next policy introduced by the Britishers means, on the pretext of alleged misrule. So what about means, it is clearly applied on the Awadh provinces here. So for that, what they declared, what that Britishers declared on that Awadh provinces means, Awadh was being misgoverned by by the Indian rulers. That's why it needed to ensure proper administration by the British people anta. So that they declared and tried to conquer the provinces of the Awadh here. So when that Britishers conquered that Awadh provinces, that people of the Awadh suffered from the British policies here. How they suffered means, after the conquering of the Awadh region by the Britishers, they had made to pay that higher taxes to the lands and all. So highest taxes started to collect from the peasants and some of the zamindars. Not only the peasants and zamindars suffered from that, even that nobles, officials, soldiers of the Awadh, they also suffered a lot from the British ruling. So totally after the conquering of the Awadh provinces by the Britishers, that people fell into the part of the hard lifestyle. So this is also another one of the policy introduced by the Britishers. This also comes under the expansion policy of the Britishers. So under the political causes, second causes we are calling it as disrespect shown to Bahadur Shah. So Bahadur Shah Jafar, he was one of the Mughal ruler, especially when that British East India Company started to impose that expansion policy on the Indian rulers in India here. So they started to show that disrespect to the Mughal rulers. So which kind of the disrespect shown by the British East India Company on that Mughal rulers means, in 1849, Lord Dalhousie announced that Bahadur Shah Jafar, he was one of the most important Mughal ruler. He should not permitted to use the Red Fort as their palace. So they announced that if he want to require that antandre, from that Red Fort to they need to shift it for the Qutub Minar region means. This is announced by the Lord Dalhousie in the year of 1849. So this is also showing that they has shown disrespect to the Mughal rulers like that. So in 1856, another one of the British viceroy, he announced that, Lord Canning, he announced that after the death of that Bahadur Shah, his successor would not be allowed to use the imperial titles. Imperial titles means royal titles. So he mentioned that they should not utilize that, they should not use that imperial titles with their names. So this is also mentioning it as one of the disrespect shown to the Mughal rulers. So totally that decision of the British people hurt the feelings of the Mughal rulers here. So it has become another one of the political causes to rise the first war of independence against the British East India Company. So third policy under the political causes, treatment given to Nana Sahib. So Nana Sahib was adopted son of the Baji Rao II, last Peshwa of that. So British refused to grant that Nana Sahib the pension they were paying to the Baji Rao II. So in the previous time that Britishers were paying pension amount to the Baji Rao II, but after the death of that Baji Rao II, the British people refused to pay the pension amount to the Nana Sahib. So Nana Sahib inherited wealth of that. So it has hurted the one of the Nana Sahib here. It has become another one of the causes to the first war of independence here. So last political causes, absentee sovereignty of the Britishers. So what about that absentee sovereignty of the British means? So that British East India Company has taken authority over the Indian people here, but that is actually governing from the Britain. So how that our Indian people felt about that ruling from the Britain itself, what that the Britishers did our country means, they are going to collect taxes from the Indians and they are taking the tax amount to the Britain and they are going to invest in the part of the Britain itself. That's why our Indian people felt that this is one of the economic loss like that, and they started to rise against the British policy of that absentee sovereignty of the British here. So another one of the thing why that Indian people felt like that means, when that Indian rulers were ruling over the country, they are also going to collect the taxes from the Indian people, but the tax amount they are investing return on the Indian people, welfare of the Indian people. That's why, but the Britishers did not do that same what that Indian rulers did for the Indian people. That's why they started to rise against the Britishers here. That only we called it as the absence of sovereignty of the Britishers.